Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemons, and this is our breakdown of episodes 3, 4, and 5 of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man on Disney+. It's a wild release schedule, but it's good for my Spidey fix. So let's jump into it and go scene by scene, finding those little Easter eggs and details you might have missed. Of course, first, make sure to check out nerdride.shop, where you can find the latest and greatest in New Rockstars merch. While we're already on the subject, topic of discussion, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, we got some of that gear. Go check it out at nerdride.shop. We got a long sleeve shirt, a short sleeve shirt. We got a bunch of different shirt options. Also, adjacent to that, all the way in Hell's Kitchen, we got some Daredevil Born Again merch. Make sure to go back to Queens and Hell's Kitchen in this merch. Go to nerdride.shop. Okay, let's get into this breakdown. And again, every episode breakdown, I will be wearing a different jersey. I know you're wondering, Jessica, how many hockey jerseys do you have? I have precisely 5. One of them is signed by the Mighty Ducks cast, so I probably will not be wearing that, but I'll try not to do repeats. Episode 3 is titled Secret Identity Crisis, which I believe refers to the comic storyline Identity Crisis, and in it, Peter is framed for murder by Norman Osborn and creates 4 new secret identities to continue being a vigilante: Prodigy, Ricochet, Red Hornet, and Dusk, which we'll see 3 of the 4 in this episode. I love that each episode has a unique cover image. Here's Spider-Man with Norman Osborn looming in the background. When we open, Peter keeps repeating in his head, "You're Spider-Man," recognizing his cover is now blown. One split screen shows him returning home and a picture of him hiking on the wall. We saw this photo last episode and we thought this could be Peter's dad or Uncle Ben because the person had short hair and from a distance looked exactly like Peter, though now, upon closer inspection, it's clearly Aunt May, and it's short-haired Aunt May that we've seen in the intro, so we might be getting a flashback in one of these episodes. We also see Peter has a new phone screen. It's now him and Nico. It was cracked last episode and now fixed, so I bet he's been dropping dimes to get this phone fixed, or got a new phone entirely. We're in Nico Minoru's room later, and I love the rock-esh posters, the slight blend of Wicked and Moon stuff for our character. Her room had a lot more things in it, according to the D23 look that they showed there. I don't know why they simplified it. I kind of liked it more D23 with all the mishigosh of being a young teenager and goth. There's a photo that I'm assuming is Nico's parents, and in the Runaways comic that Nico's from, her parents, Tina and Robert Minoru, were secretly pretty savage. They were sorcerers who helped murder a woman as part of a criminal cult called the Pride. They kind of ruled Los Angeles and served ancient demons, but Nico didn't know about that growing up, so she's still cool to go. We later meet Susan, credited as Susan O'Hara. In Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man comic issue number 1, Susan introduces herself as Nico's foster mom. If she has her birth parents picture up, I'm guessing she hasn't discovered her parents are evil yet, or they're maybe just dead, or maybe they're just not going to be a huge plot line in the show. However, it's important to flag in the comic, Nico mentioned moving to New York to start over and define herself instead of being who everyone back home wanted her to be. So I'm wondering if there was a point where she was supposed to follow in her family's footsteps and become like a really evil sorceress, but maybe in this timeline it's just that she wants to be a different person. Less chaotic, more neutral, or more chaotic neutral. Peter meets Norman at this restaurant called Eden. It's a fancy and empty restaurant. However, the lined wallpaper does resemble a Spider-Man mask. Osborn shows Peter footage of him stopping the bullies in the car from striking a bus. When Tony Stark recruited Peter in Civil War, he also revealed he knew Peter was Spider-Man by showing him footage of him stopping a car smashing into a bus. Osborn reveals that Harry, his son, was the boy that Peter saved not so long ago. He had cross-checked and narrowed the search for Spider-Man to the 4 interns he had hired. He thought one of them was just assisting Spider-Man, not acting as Spider-Man, but also keep in mind that's kind of creepy and a lot of work to do to figure out who Spider-Man is. And now he wants to help, and it's so hard to believe he's acting out of the kindness of his heart because he's still Norman Osborn, so my guard is very much still up, still very high. Osborn then offers to modify Peter's gear.
Night vision for your lenses, mild electric shock in the suit to ward off attackers, police scanner wired into the mask.
We've seen some of these abilities before replicated in some way or another. He offers night vision for the lenses, and Spider-Man sort of had this ability in the comics. He offers mild electric shock in the suit to ward off attackers. This is one of Miles Morales' powers, and Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, could also shoot bioelectric venom blast. He offers a police scanner wired into the mask, which he already has. Of course he does. Most Spideys we've seen on the big screen have devices for listening to police scanners, though in the video game, it sort of works in the same way Harry helps later. He'll use a cell phone occasionally, but most of the time it's an internal communication system through his mask, which I assume would work like the police scanner. He then suggests a GPS, which I think is because he wants to track Peter. Peter asks why someone else didn't get these powers, saying this.
Why me? Why not someone else? Someone that could have been the next Captain America instead of some kid from Queens.
And it's just so sweet because, oh, Peter, Captain America was a kid from Brooklyn. You're not that different. It's okay. You could be from Queens and be the specific Spider-Man. We see Peter's intern card, and I really hope this is a series of just random numbers. If not, I googled it. So 2/18/2010, February 18th, 2010 was the debut of the infamous Broadway show of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. This show is widely known for its many troubles, injuries due to stunts on set, and poor ticket ticket sales. They even suspended performance for a month to make it better. It was one of the most, if not the most expensive Broadway production with a budget of like $75 million and was a massive financial loss. I hope these numbers maybe are for something else, but when I Googled it, it was absolutely turn off the dark. We're then with James and Maria. They put money in the dumpster, which swings away on robot arms. A suitcase is left behind, and I love this cut from them looking into this case at their new super suits to Peter's mundane box of clothing. James and Maria are credited as Maria Vasquez and James Speed Demon Sanders. You might know or recognize Maria Vasquez with the pink trim as Tarantula. She first appeared in Heroes for Hire Volume 2 in 2006. She has blades on her wrist, and in the comics, she is a member of the same title of the comics, Heroes for Hire. This team was built to track down superhumans refusing to comply with the Superhuman Registration Act, and as for James Sanders, aka Speed Demon, he first appeared as Speed Demon in Amazing Spider-Man issue 222 in 1981, though as Wizard in 1969's Avengers Enter the Squadron Sinister. He has the power of speed and strength. He can just run really fast. He's like the Flash. Their outfits could be seen as a little homage compared to their comic outfits because in color they kind of are similar. Unmay is selling a bunch of stuff, including a sewing machine Peter used for his own economics project, except for no, he totally used it to make that janky costume. She holds up a monogrammed bowling shirt, and this is a nod to Martin Sheen's Uncle Ben in Amazing Spider-Man, who was handed a box of his bowling trophies by Aunt May in the movie. Peter also picks up the old camera, and many Peter Parkers have made some good money as photographers, usually taking pictures of themselves and selling them to the Daily Bugle. Maybe we'll see that happen here because we also get this shot that lingers on Aunt May's past due bills, motivating Peter to keep his job at Oscorp, but also to just make some extra cash. Back at school, Lonnie's happy to have passed their assignment with Peter, and he offers to pay for his and Pearl's lunch, but he can't afford it, which, oh my Shayla! We can even play, no, we should not play the clip of my Shayla because I don't want to make fun of Fast and Furious, but I will maybe. Then Lonnie asks Pearl for a ride home due to an emergency, and baby, oh, this scene makes me weak. Through Lonnie's mom, we learn that Lonnie's little brother is part of the 110th Street Gang, which I could not find any records of in Marvel Comics, but it does sound like that Bobby Womack song, that Across 110th Street. I mean, it could be a call out to that song because that song comes from the movie Across 110th Street, and it's about gangs in New York, but I don't know. I don't want to put my words, my theory into the writer's mouth, but maybe. Later, we meet Benjamin Donovan, a lawyer in the comics. He was first introduced in Luke Cage comics back in the 1970s, where he got drunk and attacked Luke Cage. The two became friends, and Donovan became his lawyer. However, he does get involved in Marvel's version of the Mafia later in his life, so he wavers back and forth between criminal and reformed citizen. Then, Lonnie takes Andre's place in the gang, and this may be where we start to see Lonnie become the version of Tombstone we're so used to seeing. Back with James and Maria, James kicks in the funniest pose with his hands behind his back. I really like how they edited this. Peter is getting double teamed and the SWAT team shows up. Luckily, Norman is trying to help. Watching Peter fight, he uses company satellite to break into his phone and scanner. He finds a loophole then in their new tech and how to use it, thus defeating the two idiots. Peter sees the same symbol on Speed Demon's boots as Butane's gloves in the last episode. It's an 8, which is a clue to the inventor's real identity, which is revealed at the end of episode 4 to be Doc Ock. As Peter locks in with Norman Osborn, Lonnie locks in with the 110th Street Gang, and we move on to episode 4, titled Hitting the Big Time. This quote means to become famous or successful, but Big Time was also the comic run in the Amazing Spider-Man released in 2012. Spider-Man comics have a long history of the floating head cover, so it's fun to see the version of that here. His suit is in a black silhouette, not spoiling the reveal of the new design. Jonah Jameson is a phenomenal example of a misinformation machine. He does such a great job of showing you how information can be weaponized and how having full context can help protect you from being manipulated. That's what's so great about Straight Arrow News. They give you full context so you can get a more complete picture from the news you read. Straight Arrow News is a free app and website, so you don't need to deal with a paywall to get your news, which good, news should be free. Their reporting is unbiased, highlighting both left and right-leaning stories and delivering reliable, factual news coverage on events across all sides of the aisle for a full picture of today's news. They've got an awesome media mist tool that helps surface stories that go underreported or don't get enough love from the algorithm to be at the top of your feed, because news can be important without being buzzy or clickbaity, and Straight Arrow News gets that. Visit san.com/newrockstars to check it out yourself. You can head over there by clicking on the link in the description or download the app by searching Straight Arrow News. When you download, you not only support New Rockstars, you're also supporting a free news platform created by a group of journalists that are on a mission to raise the bar in media. Peter is doing a presentation on his intern project he's been working with Carla Connors on, and we're just witnessing this grown man attack a child in this scene. Peter's called back to Norman's office, and on the way there, we saw this last episode, but it's a better angle now. This is Norman shaking hands with T'Chaka, the king of Wakanda, T'Challa's dad. This man is friends with Captain America and T'Chaka. He has too much credibility. He's got to be up to something. I'm sorry, I can't trust Norman Osborn even in a different universe. Harry then says this.
Dude, you're like way younger than him. Anything happens, you can outrun them.
And I feel like this kind of line will come back later in the show. I feel like Norman will go full like Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, and maybe Peter will have to outrun him, which will flash back to this scene. I'm not sure, but that quote and seeing this entire Do Not Disturb lockdown feels a little too sinister not to return to. Then we see them talking about the Sokovia Accords.
Most recently, the passage of the Sokovia Accords has created dissent in the Avengers ranks. After a skirmish at an airport in Germany, the group has scattered, and Captain Rogers and Barnes remain on the run.
While this isn't the MCU, this dimension has a lot of parallels, and it seems like there was not only some catastrophic event in Sokovia that caused an international backlash, but we got the same fight at the airport that we saw at the end of Captain America Civil War. We actually saw this exact shot of Scott grabbing Rhodey out of the air in that movie. This lines up with the timeline of Peter being recruited by Norman, as Tony had recruited Peter in the MCU just before the airport battle, which is just such an interesting parallel. Charmingly, Peter has also come up with designs for his suit, which he's done doodles of in the live action movies before. Norman shows Peter then the Prodigy suit, and it's funny because that's how he sees Peter, as his prodigy. As we mentioned in the last episode breakdown, this suit came from the time and when the comics of Spider-Man was wanted for murder, so he could still work as a superhero. Peter created the 4 identities to fight crime, and Prodigy was one of them. If you slow it down, you can actually see Dusk and Hornet suits, which we'll see in action later, that were also a part of the 4 costumes. Peter also quotes Thor here saying, "You are not worthy," referring to him when he uses the hammer, of course, so Thor's also in this timeline. We just haven't seen him yet. I love the amount of detail to every background character, and I like that they reuse a lot of the same background characters, like that old lady is from the subway with Lincoln, and Stevie Sherman, the live streamer, is skateboarding on the left. He might have been part of the distraction though, now that I think about it. So immediately we see that the Prodigy suit is a bust, and all I can think about is Edna Mode screaming, "No capes!" Peter's now messing with the Hornet suit, and Norman tells him, "You should be open to expanding your identity options," and Norman is clearly a bit more preoccupied with how he can market Peter as a hero than actually trying to help Peter be the hero he wants to become. Back with Lonnie and Big Don, they mention the Scorpions, a gang that doubles as a reference to Mac Gargan, aka the Scorpion, one of Spider-Man's frequent, at times, C-list villains. On Lonnie's errands, we see Carmilla Black, an alternate version of Scorpion from the comics, who also appears as one of Mac's henchmen. She had a convoluted history with both AIM and S.H.I.E.L.D., but it looks like here she's a much more streamlined, street-level character. On Norman's computer, there's a lot of Easter eggs and little missed details here. There's a WHIH article open. WHIH is the news organization that has appeared multiple times in the MCU. We also see a ZCN article, which is notable because this media company has only previously appeared in Daredevil and Jessica Jones. We later see the WHIH article is about T'Chaka's assassination bombing from Civil War, the ZCN article is about Captain America and Tony fighting, and the World News article is about the Lagos disaster. This was that scene in Civil War where Wanda accidentally destroyed that building. Norman also references Ultron. His arguments here are similar to those that Tony will make to Steve when he agrees to the Sokovia Accords. Norman references the Hulk, and we see a headline about his attack on Johannesburg. We saw this in Age of Ultron when Wanda, who the Avengers wanted at the time, took control of Banner and made him go on a rampage.
Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep.
Then he unveils the new suit, and I think this is around the time you can actually hear the Avengers theme song playing.
And this is Spider-Man. Isn't it?
Peter's new suit is designed after his Future Foundation look. The Future Foundation was a school for the next generation of superheroes that Reed Richards was training, so it ties in thematically here, as Norman sees Peter as the next generation of heroes following the Avengers. Peter is whipping around in his new suit, and Norman is watching over the security cameras for crime in the city. On the second screen, there's a sign for Joe's Bakery, which of course reminds me of the original Spider-Man's Joe's Pizza, and it wouldn't surprise me in this universe it's not Joe's Pizza, it's just Joe's Bakery. We're then taken to a robbery in a getaway car. Is Mikhail, the father of Alexei, aka the Rhino in the comics. Dimitri has the same name as the Chameleon, and the Chameleon is one of Spider-Man's classic villains. We don't see much of his dialogue here, but he does argue for a more subtle approach, and the gloves he wears are visually reminiscent of how the Chameleon dresses when not impersonating someone. We also have Roxana Volkov, and I think this is actually a new character. Roxanne also mentions the tracksuits, which was a branch of Kingpin's crime family in the MCU and the villains of the Hawkeye show, if you remember. And a very funny reveal, Peter intrudes, and in doing so reveals he's Spider-Man to Harry Harry Osborn, so now the whole family just knows. We then meet Mila, who seems to be this universe's version of Milo, aka the Unicorn. Yes, really, the Unicorn. That is their name. He was a Russian agent who worked for Anton Vanko. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's because his son, Ivan Vanko, was Whiplash, the villain from Iron Man 2. Then we're introduced to one of many versions, but this is our favorite version of Dr. Otto Octavius. Episode 5 is titled The Unicorn Unleashed, which refers to the tagline of Iron Man issue number 154, released in 1981, precisely the issue where Iron Man is up against the Unicorn. This episode's intro ends with the corner box of Spidey in his new Future Foundation suit. We open back with Mila and Doc Ock, and in this universe, Doc Ock is selling enhancements, and as we know, he's very famous for his own. Also, the green and yellow comic suit is I love it. I love how cartoony it is. Unfortunately, Jeff Trammell has mentioned with comicbook.com that Doc Ock and Spider-Man won't actually cross paths until the next season, which must be a larger storytelling strategy like Comic Book mentioned. Seeing as the series will be renewed through season 3, they're really just taking their time. Like in Spider-Man 2 and in the video games, Doc Ock's hideout is an abandoned warehouse. On the equipment shelf inside, you can see Speed Demon's boots, the Unicorn's helmet, and a pair of metal gloves or gauntlets, which could be for any villain, truthfully, but I like to think that's for Shocker, who we've seen in Spider-Man Homecoming. As Doc Ock confirms, Mila's helmet, like in the comics, can shoot lasers out of her power horns. That's such a stupid name. This is such a stupid character. Stupid character from the comics. I think we made him really cool in the series. Doc Ock's assistant is credited as Vincent Petilio, which is the one and only, well, not the only, but the Leapfrog, who you might have remembered from She-Hulk, who is voiced by Kellen Goff, who is a friend of the channel and a very lovely person if you've met him in person. Hi, Kellen. We learn that Doc Ock is a troubled genius, wanting to be looked at as the best inventor, and he gives examples of his competition.
Soon enough is never soon enough, Vincent. My name should be held in higher regard than Stark Banner Osborn.
We've seen Oscorp and their team. Stark Industries is up and running in this universe. It's also interesting to see that Bruce is also a very well-known brainy figure, and Ock just wants to be better than all of them. Back at Oscorp, Big Mouth Peter accidentally reveals he's Spider-Man. Then Norman offers to let Harry be a part of Team Spider-Man, which of course he does. Harry offers to be the dude at the desk, which is basically how Ned offered to be the guy in the chair in Spider-Man Homecoming. Harry then drops Peter off at school in this sick, flashy red car, and if I'm not mistaken, there are some issues where Harry and Norman drive this same flashy red car, especially in Dan Slott's Amazing Spider-Man. Finally, Peter is on time. All he needed was a car. Who would have thought? In New York, you could make it on time in a car? Impossible. Maybe it's a universe where actually there is no traffic in New York because they're always in cars and it's usually fine, except for the one that almost smashed into a bus. Okay. In class, the kid behind him is reading Stan Lee's and Steve Ditko's 1962 amazing adult fantasy, Beware of the Giants, the same comic Peter falls asleep to reading in the first episode. Nico shows Harry's version of Instagram to Peter, and it's Harry and Luna Snow doing the little heart gesture. Luna Snow is a character from Marvel Comics who is also an idol. She premiered in War of the Realms, New Agents of Atlas #1 in 2019 alongside Wave, aka R. Pearl. Her powers are really that of ice and freezing things. If you play Marvel Rivals, you'll probably love her. We unfortunately have to watch Lonnie balance football and Big Don, and this is the average TV drama story of like a rough life, a smart kid balancing everything and no one understands. Now, outside of class, Nico calls Harry the great and powerful Osboy, which I know is a joke on him being Norman Osborn's son, but also Harry, who James Franco played in the 2000 Spider-Man movies, also played the wizard in the Oz the Great and Powerful, so it's a bit little meta. Don sends Bulldozer to pick up Lonnie, and Bulldozer from the comics was part of the team The Wrecking Crew, which may sound familiar because they also appeared in She-Hulk episode 3. A lot of people in this episode appeared in She-Hulk. You may remember their frontman, Wrecker, who also appeared at Emil Blonsky's retreat, but Bulldozer was also there in episode 3. He had the construction hat. I like that this version of Bulldozer just wears a bulldozer chain. This Harry and Peter on Captain America's side for Civil War, and honestly, who wouldn't be? Harry mentions that he read somewhere that Captain America is actually a clone who died 4 years ago, so this would put his death likely during the Battle of New York, which was in 2012. Captain America being a clone also happened throughout the comics. I think Red Skull's brain was put into a Captain America clone at one point. So the theory, the conspiracy theory is there and alive. We officially meet Gargan face to face, aka Scorpion, who we've seen so many times across Marvel Comics and the animated Spider-Man series, Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Homecoming, and the video games. Scorpion, or originally Matt Gargan, like I said before, was a PI and paid $10K to participate in an experiment that mutated him into the Scorpion. Unfortunately, the process then drove him mad, and the rest is history. While the gangs are now fighting, we cut back to Spidey fighting the Unicorn, and poor Lonnie just doesn't know what to do. While Harry studies the unicorn for its flaws, Mila is getting the upper hand on Spider-Man, though she's clearly too full of herself to turn away from the fight. Back with Lonnie, instead of fighting, he's just dodging, and then the Scorpion pulls out a very scorpion tail-shaped blade. We see how both Lonnie and Spider-Man are put into positions to protect, and Spidey jumps in front of Mila's blast to protect Mikhail, while Lonnie tackles Gargan to protect Dawn. In doing so, he takes a stab right to the arm, and this better not be his throwing arm. He'll lose his scholarships, and then he'll actually become Tombstone. Oh my god, if this is the story of how he becomes Tombstone, he loses his arms, he loses his scholarships, he can't play football, so he joins a gang, I will be so mad. I don't want anything bad to happen to my boy. This is my son. Back with Spidey, he's unconscious due to the blast, and Mikhail scolds Mila, and then she crushes Peter like she's Wilson Fisk, but not before Mikhail takes off that helmet. He's doing this all for the, you know, a life for a life sentiment, but he's still a bad guy, and kind of wants that to be known and on the record to everybody around him.
Consider us even, Bug. But if you are ever unfortunate enough to cross my path again, all the web you can spin won't be enough to restrain me from ending your existence.
Peter almost misses the movies with Nico, and in the back you can actually see Zach Cherry is also attending this movie. Like Lonnie, Peter is forced to balance a life between friends and his secret part-time job, and he invited Harry, and Nico ain't about it. Nico looks down at her necklace and says, "It's fine." And Nico's necklace, I assume, is a version of her staff. The staff from the comics, it was passed through generations from Judy Minoru, Nico's grandmother, to her mother Tina Minoru, and eventually to Nico, who absorbed it when her mother tried to attack her with it. Though we might not see the evil side of her family, there's a chance this necklace was simply just a family heirloom that she wears to remember them. With Lonnie and Dawn, Dawn is thankful that Lonnie saved his life, but he now knows he's loyal, and Lonnie has now officially gotten his name Tombstone, and baby, no, my Shayla, my Shayla. Oh God, I can't have anything bad happen to him. I don't want him to die. I don't want him to turn into a weird giant Frankenstein. I just want him to be Lonnie. I just want him to be fine Lonnie. And we close to the credits, and this 3-episode drop did nothing but stress me out and make me worry for Lonnie. And learning they're stretching the season since they've already been renewed for a 3rd season makes me more skeptical of everyone. They're playing the long game with Otto, so are they playing the long game with Norman? Which villains are gonna actually be villaining? Tune in next week to find out. Maybe we'll get some more information. For now, follow me at Lulu_Clemons, subscribe to all 3 channels on the new Rockstars network for breakdowns, news coverage, everything you love. Make sure to check out the break room where we'll be talking about your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and a big fat giant thank you to my Harry Osborn, Noah Chen. Couldn't do this without you. I'll see you guys next week.